The blue wristband at 1:11 a.m. He said it was just a party. I'm not jealous of bodies, I'm jealous of access. Bodies tell the truth if you stop staging them. Access decides whose truth is allowed to arrive. At 1:11 a.m., my partner walked into our apartment with his jacket open and a plastic wristband the color of a siren cinched around his right hand. The clasp made a small sound when he pulled his sleeve back to reach for the kettle, plastic against hair, a permission that thought it could impersonate jewelry. Julian saw my eyes go to it and did the thing with his mouth where he half laughs to buy time. They were making everyone wear these, he said, already bored with his own explanation. It was just a party. Just is a word I don't trust. It arrives late and wants a medal for effort. I stirred the teapot with a spoon, as if making noise in the kitchen could replace a conversation with steam. He leaned against the counter like a man auditioning for nonchalance. The wristband, bright on the night, tracked every flick of his hand. "What color did I get if I had gone?" I asked. It was a joke that thought it had the right to pretend. He didn't answer. He looked past me at the window, at our reflection arranged in the glass like a limited edition print. His height and my tired posture, the city outside pretending it didn't listen. We knew the rumor of that party without needing the address. Members-only loft, art people who spoke in verbs, an intimacy coach moonlighting as a curator, an NDA at the door because of course there was. Blue meant upstairs, someone had told me months ago, someone who loved gossip like vitamins. Red meant downstairs. Green meant assist. Nothing meant you waited. "I could cut it off," he said, fingering the clasp. He didn't. We have traditions that try to save us. At 7:05 a.m., I filmed the coffee rising and right here under it because words like addresses, and because ritual is cheaper than religion. I did it the next morning and he slid his hand into the frame, palm to mine without touching, a lid that doesn't claim to seal. "Here," he said. The band, now dangling from the tap like a souvenir, flashed blue as the kettle's steam caught it. At noon, I texted Matt, the one person I allow to treat my panic like paperwork. "Lunch," I wrote, "I have a color and a story applying for the same job." He sent back a time and his usual liturgy, one question only. At the bar, he listened to the wristband like it could sing. "What you know is he got access," he said. "What you don't is what he wanted it for. Ask why, not who. If you ask who, the night gets to decide what you become." When I got home, the blue lay on the counter like a bruise taken off the body. Julian moved around it carefully, which is how men confess without saying a word. "Do you want me to talk first?" he said, palms on the table as if honesty were a push-up and he needed leverage. He'd showered, but the scent of whatever the party had decided to be still clung to his collarbone. Citrus, sweat, the metallic aftertaste of secrets. "Why the color?" I asked, because Matt had earned his keep. "Why upstairs?" He looked at the window again. "It's his habit, to outsource blame to glass. Because the part wasn't coming," he said. "Because Luca said the upstairs rooms had less shame in them, and he needed to hear his track in a place where the ceiling wasn't embarrassed. Because Cashin texted, 'Come see the neon,' and I thought no one should be allowed to name an hour that, and then I went anyway and found out neon can be a verb." The name hit the room with the force of something that had been asking for admission politely for weeks. Cashin. He was a curator, an intimacy coach, something slippery enough to justify a life and rude enough to enjoy it. I'd met him twice, once in a lobby and once at a street corner where the wind treated us like confetti. He had a voice that argued with furniture and won. "Do you want him?" I asked, breaking Matt's faith without apologizing. "I want to be better," Julian said. "Sometimes he feels like the staircase." He smiled without his teeth, which is the shape his mouth makes when it means it and hates that it means it. "I'm not a detective. I edit sound for films where people don't get the endings they deserve and still manage to be forgiven by strangers. If you give me a lie, I don't know where to put the echo. I didn't catch him in anything. A bracelet told a story about gravity and staircases. I could turn my back on that kind of author. We tried to be men with hobbies instead of weapons. We made dinner. We argued about a spice. He told me I cook with intention and season with regret. I told him he kissed like a man who had grown bored of winning. We slept not like lovers but like witnesses. The message came at 11:01 p.m. the next night. A location pin pulsed not far from where the party had been. "Blue wristbands again," Cashin wrote, "because some men think honesty is a flavor." I looked at the screen until the map learned how to be rude. "If I go," Julian said, "do you want to know before or after?" "During," I said, which is not noble but is, in my experience, useful. I went too. The doorman wore a suit in a color that had never earned a name. The NDA on the podium had liability in italics, which felt like vanity with a law degree. Inside, the downstairs had the humid hum of people performing warmth. Up a flight lit like a confession booth, the upstairs had rooms arranged by themes the way museums arrange regret. Things behind glass so you could pretend you're looking didn't have consequences. In the corner, a man with a Polaroid camera took pictures of people pretending to be candid. The pictures slid out with the sound of very soft applause. Blue bands floated like punctuation on wrists as couples negotiated their distances. Julian was at the back, where a long window cut the night into sheets. Cashin leaned against the frame, holding a drink like an instrument. They stood in that way two men do when they want to be left alone and want someone to notice. I became the kind of person who notices. Julian saw me and smiled the second sort of smile, grateful, guilty, unsurprised. The light from the window painted him persuasive. I walked toward them with the calm of a man who has decided to act before he thinks. "Coincidence," Cashin said. He said it as if he had a contract with the word. He wore no mask. His eyes did the work instead. Up close, he smelled like lime peeling and patience. "We thought we'd practice," Julian said, borrowing line readings from our last rehearsal. "Being strangers." "Then allow me to introduce you," Cashin said, stepping nearer like weather. He offered his hand and I took it because sometimes the best way to survive a storm is to shake hands with it. His fingers were warm, a temperature I preferred to lie to myself about. In the next room, a couch had invited people to be careless. The music negotiated with blood. Cashin guided us there with the authority of a priest in a religion I didn't trust, and we sat, Julian first, then me, then the room leaned toward us. Cashin perched on the armrest, a king who'd learned to prefer the edge. He rested two fingers against Julian's jaw, correcting an angle no one else could see. "Eyes first," he said. "Then breath. Then contact." Julian looked at me, and I recognized the precise moment a kiss begins in a life you've already decided to keep. We were careful about it, not coy, not exhibitionist. His mouth found mine, and it was new because we were petty and proud, and because the windows were complicit. Cashin watched, and I didn't pretend I wanted him to stop. He set his glass down without looking and put his hand on the back of my neck as if closing a door that had let too much weather in. I kissed Julian deeper, an answer to a question we'd been writing the wrong way. The couch agreed to be a collaborator and not a witness. I am not writing this for people who count things. YouTube will let you have outlines and the honest shape of a gasp. It will let you have a mouth at a throat and the kind of hand that urges without insisting. It will let you have a shirt that remembers how to open and a back that remembers how to arch for the right reasons. It will let you have breath that is not a moral but a system. That's enough. The rest is a room learning 3 names it didn't deserve. We slowed before the night could decide for us. The room cooled and Cashin's laugh landed like a coin that didn't pick sides. Julian's shoulder pressed into mine like a signature. I thought about the rules under our orange magnet and wondered whether a kitchen can be retroactively brave. Cashin brushed my wrist with his knuckles once, like punctuation. "Do you want me to recuse myself?" he asked, half a joke, half procedure. "I want my boyfriend," I said, and I didn't realize how much I meant it until the sentence finished being spoken. We left separately to be polite to the fiction. Julian and I met on the sidewalk 2 blocks away, pretended to be two men deciding whether to share a cab. We walked home because we were men who still believed in the legality of sidewalks. The lock cleared its throat at 3:14. The apartment performed neutrality. I stood in the kitchen and waited for the kettle to learn its song. Julian put both hands on the table like a student eager to be corrected. "Are we going to say what we did?" he asked. "We're going to say what we want," I said. I looked at his mouth. I knew what I wanted. "I want to be the man who tells you why before I ever tell you who," he said. "I want to be the mistake that keeps choosing the person it hurts less to be honest with." "That's more than I had an hour ago," I said, which is the closest I come to mercy. We didn't add a rule to the fridge. We didn't erase one. We sat on the floor with our backs against the cabinets and let our thighs make decisions our mouths were too tired to defend. He put his head on my shoulder, and the night agreed to become a room. In the morning, the kettle kept its appointment. I filmed the coffee rising and wrote here beneath it because I'm boring and the world needs boring more than it admits. Julian slid his hand into the frame and pressed his palm to mine without touching. "Here," he said. We ate toast that didn't ask questions. We went to work like people who had names and used them properly. Cashin texted at noon. "No hospitals, right?" A line, then a winking dot. I typed nothing because sometimes survival is choosing the right absence. That evening, the intimacy coach at our rehearsal took notes from the back and pretended to read them. We kissed on stage like professionals with good counsel. The audience breathed and gave back what it didn't need to keep. It wasn't the last test. The world is thorough when it likes a lesson. One night the doorbell registered a laugh in the hallway that sounded like a coin, and I didn't open the app. One afternoon, the shared album tried to sneak a thumbnail into the grid, and I pressed and held until the moment admitted to being smaller than the story I loaned it. One morning, the Uber receipt drew a line to a street we didn't own, and the Keller machine still sang, and we ate breakfast anyway. If another night offers me a wristband the color of a siren, or a window that wants credit for distance, or a man whose voice is a staircase, I hope I do the handful of humiliating, useful things that keep me almost honest. Put water on. Move the chair to the middle of the kitchen when words want to riot. Ask why before who. Hold the moment before contact and let it finish being a scene. Wait for the key in the lock like it's the first note in a song you still want to learn. I don't know if we got away with anything. I know that when Julian says, "Here now," my body does not audition for suspicion before it believes him. I know the wristband lies on the counter where the steam turned it into a softened circle, and I haven't thrown it away because souvenirs are cheaper than regrets. I know the city keeps making rooms that want our names, and that sometimes we teach them together, and sometimes we don't. If we're any good at this, we'll keep being the address. And if we can't, we'll be the map that admits its misprints and still traces a way home, past the hotel that thinks it's a rival, past the staircases that think they're verbs, past the chandelier that thinks it's a moon, into the kitchen where the kettle tells the time and the orange magnet holds up paper like it knows what paper can save.